Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. The historian and linguist Eric Stanley once stated that the history of scholarship is a history of error, a maxim originally applied to the study of the early Middle Ages, but one that is equally applicable to the science of paleontology. In the previous video uploaded several years ago, I covered the early history and development of paleoart, detailing the many changes regarding the depiction of extinct animals, especially as knowledge of dinosaurs substantially improved over the course of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Originally rendered as vague, enormous, dragon-like monsters that would not have seemed out of place in the Old Testament or the Lord of the Rings, by the late 19th century dinosaurs were still seen as monstrous, but were at least restored based on almost complete skeletal material, rather than the isolated fragments known to Gideon Mantell and Sir Richard Owen. Today, of course, dinosaurs are viewed very differently, if not by the general public, then certainly by paleontologists, who regard these animals as active, dynamic, and often feathered, traits that were propelled by the dinosaur renaissance that began in the late 1960s. All of this is to say that our understanding of extinct animals is prone to change, and therefore we must always keep an open mind concerning the life appearances of the past, not becoming too attached to any one depiction of our favourite dead beasties. A perfect example of such trends is not a dinosaur, however, but a Cenozoic mammal, Andrewsarchus. First discovered on an expedition to Inner Mongolia led by Roy Chapman Andrews, a real-life inspiration for the fictional Indiana Jones, and subsequently named by asshole eugenics enthusiast Henry Fairfield Osborn in 1924, Andrewsarchus is known from a single specimen consisting of a largely complete skull and isolated teeth. The recovered skull was enormous, measuring about 83 centimetres or roughly 2.74 feet long, and possessed an elongated snout equipped with fearsome-looking teeth. From such fragmentary remains, it was theorised that this animal was probably a mesonychid, a lineage of often vaguely wolf-like carnivorous ungulates that were successful predators during the Paleocene and Eocene. Andrewsarchus was native to the Middle Eocene and was therefore seen as a gigantic mesonychid and one of the largest terrestrial mammal predators of all time. Older depictions of the animal in paleoart showed it to be a massive hypercarnivorous beast, a trend which persisted into the 21st century and was made famous in Walking with Beasts, which depicted Andrewsarchus as a gargantuan wolf-like animal that hunted the largest herbivorous mammals of the time, the brontotheres. Kenneth Branagh's narration even cleverly refers to it as a sheep in wolf's clothing, referring to its identity as a carnivorous ungulate. However, despite the iconic nature of the gigantic wolf interpretation, studies carried out since the 1960s have questioned the mesonychid identity of this animal, noting similarities with the infamous so-called hell pigs, the Entelodonts. These conclusions have been borne out by further analyses, suggesting that Andrewsarchus was a member of the artiodactyl clade Whippomorpha or Cetanchodontomorpha, which includes modern cetaceans and hippos, as well as a variety of extinct forms, including the vaguely pig-like Acanodon and the aforementioned Entelodonts. Like all artiodactyls, this clade probably originated as small generalist omnivores close to the Paleocene-Eocene boundary, with ancestral forms resembling the early cetacean relative Indohyus, living similarly to modern chevretains in the tropical forest that covered much of the northern hemisphere at this time. As the Eocene progressed, members of Whippomorpha developed larger body sizes, but often retained their omnivorous diets, filling niches similar to those of pigs or even bears. The Middle Eocene Andrewsarchus was an example of this overall trend, with the living animal possibly measuring up to 3.7 metres long and weighing between 700 and 1,000 kilograms, or up to 2,200 pounds. Studies of its teeth and oddly tapered jaws have concluded that this genus was almost certainly omnivorous, not a hypercarnivore as was previously thought, with its proposed bite strength being surprisingly less powerful than that of the later Entelodonts. It could be that Andrewsarchus was a large-bodied ecological generalist, feeding on a mixture of plants, fruit, roots and carrion, living somewhat like modern brown bears, although more complete remains are needed in order to gain a better understanding of how this animal may have lived. The most recent study concerning the genus, published in 2023, classifies it as a sister lineage to the Entelodonts, which is interesting, as this well-known group first appears towards the end of the Eocene, perhaps evolving from older forms more similar to Andrewsarchus. It was native to the Idin-Manhar formation of Inner Mongolia, in what is now northern China about 37 million years ago. Living alongside a variety of other mammals, including the true mesonychids, omnivorous hellohyoid artiodactyls, and a diverse array of herbivorous brontotheres. As regards the life appearance of Andrewsarchus, we are still mostly in the dark. The genus probably resembled a terrestrial hippo or a less specialised entelodont, far more than the giant wolf of popular tradition. The head would have been proportionally large in relation to the body, which is probably quite barrel-chested, while the tail may have been shorter than is often thought, more like those of modern ungulates than the heavy-tailed mesonychids. All of this leaves the title of largest terrestrial carnivorous mammal as an open question. At present, the most massive terrestrial carnivoran in the fossil record is probably the South American short-faced bear Arctotherium angustidens, which could potentially reach about 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed at least 1.5 metric tons at the heaviest, about twice as massive as a modern male polar bear. However, this animal is thought to have been an omnivore that did include significant amounts of meat in its diet. The biggest hypercarnivorous terrestrial mammals were probably found among hyenodonts and amphicyonids, which could reach more than 500 kilograms, and would have looked a little bit like enormous wolves themselves. Despite these developments though, Andrewsarchus would have still been a formidable animal, comparable to a modern American bison in size, and I'm sure those jaws could have been used for at least occasionally preying on other mammals. It would have been even more intimidating if the animal was highly aggressive and territorial, like the living hippos to which it is distantly related. Sometimes, the newer paleontological theories can make certain extinct species even scarier than ideas thought up in the early 20th century, and a 1-ton land hippo sounds pretty terrifying to me. Unfortunately, images of the outdated wolf-like Andrewsarchus are still very common online, with even some impressively detailed museum models now seriously out of date. All of this just goes to show that new scientific interpretations of older fragmentary finds can radically alter our view of extinct animals, which for some can be a painful process. But as long as we don't become too attached to any one depiction of extinct life and keep our minds open, then new discoveries can continue to thrill and amaze us. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be covering another misunderstood extinct genus, Ceratosaurus, the underdog of the late Jurassic Morrison formation, which seems to only exist in paleomedia as a chew toy for Allosaurus. In addition, I'll also be detailing more of the Morrison's lesser-known theropods that lived alongside Ceratosaurus and rarely received much attention, including Martiasaurus and Stokesaurus. See you again soon. Cheerio.